It's v.h.s.x. What do you mean?
Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're reacting and having a discussion about a video from Scott Jun titled "This Japanese tier list is weird." So Scott actually gives like a full-blown like 2-minute explanation as to like why he's talking about this and everything. If you want to listen to that, you can in its original form. But here I wanted to quickly touch on the actual tier list and going off of what we're actually able to see according to the Japanese ranking the killers. So right off the bat, I'm seeing a lot of characters that are very unique in a lot of ways, and a lot of characters that a lot of people may or may not disagree with. I'm gonna start off with the S tiers. So Nurse, Twins, Blight, all of those are very consistent. I know that it may be shocking to a lot of people that Twins is an S tier killer, but they actually are an S tier killer. The only thing is that we don't see the character enough to where even nowadays, I think like the character is always like super bugged at all the time. So I think that a lot of survivors have less of a chance to complain because the character basically never appears, because nobody actually plays the Twins, and for a myriad of reasons. But they are indeed an actual very strong killer. I think almost one of the strongest killers in the game. If they actually worked properly, I think they'd be a much bigger problem for these survivors, and they would most likely complain for them to get nerfed as well. Now, Blight makes sense, Nurse makes sense. This is even standard across even the American tier list. Now, we also see the Crossu. That also makes sense, considering that they are an S tier killer. That does make sense. They have very high mobility, very strong killer. I would have to say, even with the nerfs, I gotta say they have a lot of utility. I would say a very, very good killer overall. Now, when it comes down to the Lich being S tier, I gotta say that does make sense. Sometimes I would say like an A tier, but S tier, in my opinion, a little bit generous. But I understand that the Japanese do play DBD a little bit differently than the Americans do. And for Vecna to be that strong, I would say, yeah, I think that checks out. Like, it's a character that has an option for everything. You have anti-loop, multiple forms of it, really. Like you have map traversal. You also have information built into your base kit. You also have different like things you can do with those spells, right? Like, they all have different utilities, and depending on the maps, can give you a lot of different outcomes and different utility. I would say that it's a very good killer. So I completely agree with this with the S tiers that they're giving us here. As for the A tiers, yeah, this checks out. I mean, this is also standard for American. Singularity, Spirit, Dracula. Like, Dracula's either an A or an S tier usually. But we're noticing a little bit of a difference here. We're seeing Wraith, we're seeing Plague, we're seeing the Cenobite, or in other words, Pinhead. And the reason that I think that these characters are deemed so powerful, especially across the board with the Japanese players, is their frequent use of like self-care, their frequent use of the botany, I think it is. Like, they like to self-heal a lot of the time without using without having their teammates heal them and stuff like that. And I would say objectively, I would imagine Japanese players are miles ahead in comparison to American players, especially on Survivor, because of the fact that even the escape rates, as we've covered in a previous video that I'll link at the end, the Japanese across the board are outperforming the rest of the world when it comes to playing DBD. And Plague and Wraith are two characters that are anti-heal in a lot of ways. And even more so, you could say even Kenneki, very anti-heal, which is something that they tend to gravitate to. I would say that self-care, even in the comp scene, was a thing I saw a lot of. And they even had Legion being at like one of the characters being picked for the ranked you could say the what do you call it, the comp scene for when I did see it back in the day. Now in the B tier being Dredge, Knight, Oni, Myers, Freddy. I mean, yeah, that I think I would agree with that. I wouldn't imagine, I never really thought that Myers was really that strong. Like, as much as survivors will try to gaslight you into thinking that Myers is like this crazy killer, like he's really not that strong. You know, whole W is still the strongest thing in the game, so like it's really impossible for him to really catch up in a lot of ways. So, and Dredge, I would say I would have considered to be more of a weaker towards a C tier. And even Knight, I would say, but B is still pretty close to what I would personally think that the characters are at. That is just how I'm seeing it, at least. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the C tiers. So according to the Japanese players, the C tiers are Legion, Clown, Houndmaster, Doctor, and surprisingly, there are a couple of picks here that are a little bit higher than I would have anticipated, right? We're seeing Doctor, I do think is a C tier killer. I do not think that they're completely D tier, but I do think there are at least a C tier killer where like if you even count Ghostface, like I would say that Doctor's still a step above Ghostface in that sense. You still have the anti-loop, you still have like the hallucinations and things like that. Legion, same thing. Like I think there's just a lot of other utility that a lot of these characters have. Now with the ones that really surprised me, I have to say, are definitely Trapper being C tier, and not D tier, which is quite shocking. And Pig makes sense. That's consistent to American, like American tier lists. Animatronic, yeah, I would consider Animatronic to, you know, or I guess you could say Springtrap. I would not consider Springtrap to be that strong. I would probably agree with C tier. If we're only going from S to D, then I would say that the Springtrap is definitely C tier. Like there is no question in my mind, not even close to B. Very weak in my opinion. Wesker being C tier is interesting, but it makes sense as well as the Deathslinger, because I think that dodging might be something that, because I would imagine that the escape rates are just higher around in the Japan stats, they probably have a lot more experience with dodging powers and doing other things like that. And most likely Wesker is going to suffer because he only has like 2 shots, like basically to grab somebody. One is short range and one is long range. So if you already understand how that functions, it might be a lot easier to end up dodging more often than not. But who knows, right? Who knows? Like, you know, I haven't been able to like actually see like Japanese games to be able to fully confirm that. But just from like my understanding of the escape rate data, and also the understanding of how, like, you know, what's kind of meta for the Japanese players, I would imagine that they would probably be pretty good at dodging things, and that's probably why Nemesis and Wesker. Nemesis, I would agree, is like a C tier as well. I would not consider Nemesis even close to even B tier at this point. But Hillbilly is definitely an interesting sort of pick to make them C tier. I'm a bit unsure as to why, though. I really am not sure. I don't know how DBD is played overseas to understand that, but it is interesting. Now, I would consider Hillbilly to be quite strong, but I think it's because, you know, how Hillbilly is played in American servers. I know that it's a lot about like trying to kind of blind fire your saw in directions, essentially around loops and things like that, and sort of a lot of guesswork, which I think would make the character quite weak if you are relying on chance, which I'm pretty sure if you're going against very strong players, they're most likely going to understand that leaving the loop is always just going to be better, or something like that. Just from what I can estimate. And that's also why I kind of choose not to really play Hillbilly much at all, because it is requiring you, when you, at least when I've even seen clips or when I see Hillbillies play, it's a lot of like, I don't like, they don't necessarily like, it doesn't look like they know where they're going, but like I think it's a lot of like guessing, I think, when you play them and try to counteract the loops in a lot of ways. Not to say that it's a bad killer, and not to say that those players are not incredible at what they do, but at least from when I've tried to learn it or when I've actually tried playing it and stuff like that, it just didn't really seem like it was really like the juice was not really worth the squeeze in a lot of ways. And I think it was because of a lot of the guest working that kind of goes into play there, which is like why I was kind of against it. And finally, we also have the D tiers, which I would say that this is all right. Artist being a D tier, as something I completely agreed with. When I've played Artist myself, at least, I would say that Artist definitely falls pretty flat in a lot of ways. And I have to say, I mean, you know, I don't think that Artist is that incredible. Like in terms of just like overall like tier list, I would say like maybe they'd be a little bit better, but I would not consider Artist to be that strong. And yeah, Sadako makes sense to leave them at the D tier. That's pretty much exactly where they belong. Cannibal, same thing. I would have personally added Cannibal as like a C or D tier personally. Unknown, same thing. Like I would say, at least when I personally played Unknown, I don't think that Unknown is very strong. You know, the capability to be revealed very quickly, on top of the fact that dodging is quite easy to do in a lot of ways. It's just really not that important or not that crazy. And notice here, even Pyramid Head, even Huntress, Chucky, Xenomorph, Demogorgon, like even Trickster, even Ghostface, like all these characters that I personally thought were not really that incredible, in a lot of ways, when I've personally played them, to like even try to learn like Huntress or to learn Xeno or to learn Demo or to learn Trickster, I was like, yeah, these characters are really not consistent where you can pick it up and understand exactly what you need to do. I would think that this is probably consistent even with the Japanese players, because like the theory I was making before, which is possible that they are just really good at dodging a lot of characters. And I think that that's why Huntress is probably at the lower tier in terms of the Japanese players. Probably Pyramid Head, I would understand completely why they would rank them Pyramid Head very low. He has a very, very telegraphed animation. He's very loud in a lot of ways. Like you'll know exactly when he's shooting, you know exactly when he's firing. I mean, like when he sets up his power, because it makes a big bang noise when he drops it down, and then when he fires, he even makes like a growl, and it like has like a thing that shoots out. He's very noisy, so I think that like people that are basically waiting for that to go through are going to easily dodge that, for my opinion, as a P100 Pyramid Head. That's just from what I've seen, what I've noticed when I play. Same thing, like it's really not that hard to dodge Pyramid Head, in the same way that it's not hard to dodge Unknown, and maybe even in some instances it's not that hard to dodge Demo or even Xeno. Like I think that those characters are definitely not super amazing. And as a P100 Chucky as well, I've constantly been saying, as much as a lot of people love to disagree, I've always said that Chucky was a C tier at most. I've always said that as a Chucky player myself, as a P100 Chucky. I've always said this. I've always said that Chucky's counterplay was just so strong, like in a lot of ways. Like all you really have to do is just turn a corner or go behind him as he's dashing, and he's not going to hit you because he doesn't have the capability to turn around. He only has like that sort of like a protractor half circle in front of him. So if you just turn a corner, he's not going to be able to like go around the corner or anything like that, especially when he's committed to running into a direction. It only goes forward and stuff like that. Very easy to dodge. I've gone against plenty of competent players that are able to dodge, like they can do that. And of course, you know, as a result, I've adapted to that. But I can't say that that's still going to make the character any stronger than he already is. Like, he's still just pretty low tier, in my opinion. And even more so, like, with a character like Xeno or even Demo, I think it's very hard to really aim with those characters. From my own experience of trying to learn them at the time that I've tried, like, I've just never really been interested in it. And even furthermore, I think that Demo's, like miss cooldown to me feels very clunky. So I think that maybe that might be applicable to those players even across this, like, you know, across the board, because you know, you can't even like turn or look anywhere. Like when you miss, like you're looking at your hand, your claw things, and then you have to like slowly get up and then turn around, which could probably feel very clunky, and it's probably very easy to make a lot of distance because of it. And Trickster, I would also think that makes sense as well. And of course, Ghostface is also always at the bottom of every tier list, as I've always stated. And obviously, Skull Merchant being at the E tier, which is something I also agree with. I think that that is pretty consistent with what we know about the game, and I think that's even consistent across even American tier lists as well. So I gotta say, like, as much as we might be a little bit surprised to see that the Japanese tier list being a little bit weird according to Scott, I can kind of step into the shoes a little bit and kind of understand like where they're coming from when it comes down to the tier list, because I would probably rank these characters in the same places because of it, right? And I think it's also, we have to keep in mind like what is being chosen as like some of the highest pick perks in Japan, and then we can kind of compare with what they think is the strongest, and then from there we can then kind of come to the conclusion that this tier list is pretty consistent across the board with how they play. So characters that were anti-healing like Plague were of course like quite strong because they can't heal, which is therefore like takes away the pressure that they would have had normally, and it takes away a perk slot because if they can't self-heal if they are broken from the infection. So that makes sense. I will say though, like, you know, as well, like maybe the Japanese players are just quite good at dodging. Like that might be that might be the case. And I even think even more so with Artist too, because Artist is not very lethal unless you're up close. So I think all this kind of stays true to even American tier lists and stuff like that. And I gotta say, I do agree with a lot of their takes on this. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with the Japanese tier list? Do you agree with my takes, or do you have your own takes and you disagree with the tier list? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But with that being said, consider becoming a member to have your name read off at the end of every video. Also get access to exclusive content you won't see anywhere else, or you can join the Patreon as well and get the same perks, of course. And let me know what you guys think. See you guys in the next one. Well, I wanted to go ahead and take some time out to thank all my members from Patreon with Crow King 101, my YouTube members, Majora Jeff, Endire, Evil Peachy YT, Zero Mocker, Christian, Hexdev, and Crow Vader, and for my Twitch subscribers, Cake is the Road, Danica 2002, Final Girl _ Bunny, Acklefin, Chili Cinderace, Zero Mocker, Ginsburg, Johns 117 _ Lovely Ghost TTV, Jar TTV, Zazabu, and Crow Vader. Just wanted to thank you guys. And if you also want to have your name read off at the end of every video, make sure you join on one of these platforms to get one of those perks, as well as the other perks you get. So appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much.